Hello and welcome to Gefet in the Daf. I'm Yael Shimoni, bringing to you with Hadran and Yeshivat Risha, learning Rashi and Tosfot on our Sugyot and Daf Yomi. And today we'll be asking a question which I think has relevance to our emotions in our learning of Moed Katan. This Masechta Moed Katan, you can half it into two parts. The first part is a smaller part, which we just finished, the part of Simchat Yom Tov. And now, Chol HaMoed. Now we're moving to Avelut. And it's very interesting to see how these two things, Simcha and Avelut, come together in the same Masechta. And today we'll ask, is Simcha a stronger sense and a stronger feeling than Avelut? Does happiness take over sadness? And I think I can prove from the Sugya that that is not the case. And while we learn Hilchot Avelus, we'll look into all kinds of these areas this week and next week, Bezrat Hashem, talking about sadness and happiness. So let's begin with our Sugya in Daf Yud Aleph. And the Sugya asks, what happens when somebody loses a person who's karov to him and he's Avel, and also has a holiday to celebrate at the same time? And the Sugya says the following: an Avel is not Avel in the Regel. Why? Because it is written, V'samachta b'chagecha. Just reading this statement, I would think that happiness is a stronger emotion, or that the Torah tells us that you have to be stronger in your happiness than in your sadness. But if you continue learning the Sugya, we'll see that that is not the case at all, because the Sugya says, if we're talking about Avelut that started before the Chag, comes the mitzvah aseh of many, and dache, and takes over the mitzvah aseh of a yachid, of one man. And if it's avelut that started now, the avelut, the sadness of the avelut, does not come in now because it's an aseh of yachid, and it's not to overcome the aseh of many, of rabim. What is the Sugya talking about? What are these two situations? A situation that first you are Avel and then you have a Chag, or a situation that you have a Chag and then you're Avel. So let's just understand these two situations. One situation is if somebody lost somebody and is Avel before the Chag. Let's say somebody is Avel on Monday and the Chag comes in on Wednesday. So he already had 2 days of Avelut. That's called Avelut Mi'ikara. That's being Avel before the Chag. In such a situation, the Gemara says, first you're Avel, so that's mitzvah aseh of a Yachid. Then when the Chag will come, you'll become Metuve as Rabim, as many, and then the mitzvah of many will be stronger than the mitzvah of one. That's Avelut Mi'ikara. What happens? What's Avelut Dehashta? Avelut now. If now I'm in the Chag, let's say it's Pesach, I'm in the middle of the Pesach, and then I'm losing somebody dies in the middle of the Chag, I've been already happy. I was mitzvah as many to be happy before the Avelut, and now comes the Avelut now, and is trying to take over the mitzvah of Simcha, and it cannot win over. Why? Because the mitzvah of Simcha is a mitzvah of many, and the mitzvah of Avelut is a mitzvah of a single person. That's what the Sugya talks about. What we'll talk about next week is what happens in the Chag, and really does a person have to put all of his sadness aside and not to have any avelut in their house. Bezrat Hashem will deal with this difficult question next week, and we have important things to say on this sugya regarding a very important Tosfot in Daf Chaf. But that's next week. Now let's continue with our sugya and see that first we've learned that it's not that happiness is stronger than sadness. Why? Because the Gemara never said this. The Gemara said it is many who overcome the mitzvah of one. Avelut is a mitzvah of one person, and Simcha is a mitzvah of many. Rashi here explained to us, how do we know that these mitzvot are mitzvot of many or a mitzvot of one? And Rashi says, the mitzvah of many is the mitzvah of v'samachta b'chagecha. Even though it is written in one person, v'samachta b'chagecha, it regards the entire people of Israel, and that's why it's a mitzvah of many. How about Evel? Says Rashi, Evel, you learn that it's Evel of Yachid because it is written in Yirmiyahu, Evel Yachid Asi Lach. We'll ask Rashi a simple question. What happens if many people are avelut? together. What happens if the entirety of Israel is Avel? Maybe then we'll have Avelut of Rabim, and then we'll have Simcha of Rabim and Avelut of Rabim contradicting one another. In order to answer this question, do we have a Velud of Rabim? Let's look at the pasuk from Yirmiyahu that Rashi is quoting in his commentary. So Rashi is quoting Yirmiyahu saying to Am Yisrael, Bat Ami, the people of Israel, Chigri sak v'itpalshi ba'efer evel yachid asilach. Yirmiyahu is not talking about one person. Yirmiyahu is talking about the whole of Am Yisrael. Yirmiyahu is talking about the Churban of Bet HaMikdash. Churban of Bet HaMikdash, that's really Evel Rabim. There's no more of an Evel Rabim than that. And that is the pasuk where Rashi is learning that Evel is Evel Yachid. And it's very interesting to see that Rashi on Yirmiyahu says Evel Yachid, do an Evel as if you lost your only son. But Rashi here on the Gemara says Evel Yachid, it's Evel of a single person, and I'm learning that from Yirmiyahu. What does this mean? I think what Rashi is saying here is that when we're sad, when we're in Avelut, we're always singular. We're never a group in Avelut. And that's why Avelut will always be a mitzvah of a Yachid. And that's why the Simcha will overcome it, because the Simcha is a mitzvah of Rabim, and Evel will always be a mitzvah of Yachid. We'll just mention that Rashi here may not be the same Rashi on the Chumash, because Rashi in Moed Katan is not necessarily really Rashi. But what Rashi in the Chumash helped us to notice is that Rashi here on the Gemara is saying something very important about Avelut in general and sadness in general. That sadness is a feeling that makes you alone, always alone. Let's continue to the Tosfot, who is asking a very important question on this sugya. Let's ask the question before we read the Tosfot, and we'll see how the Tosfot gives two answers to this very, very important question. The sugya, as we saw, said that the reason that Avelut is being overcome by Simcha is because Simcha is Rabbi and Avelut is Yachid. But that is very strange, because we learned already in Daf Yud Aleph that Avelut is a din d'Rabbanan, and we know that Simcha is din d'Oraita. So the sugya should have said that the reason that Simcha overcomes Avelut is because Simcha is d'Oraita and Avelut is d'Rabbanan. Why is the sugya not talking about this at all? Why is the sugya not mentioning the fact that Simcha is d'Oraita and Avelut is d'Rabbanan? The Tosfot asks this question and has two different answers to the same question, which are actually contradictory. The first teretz in this Tosfot is that even though we learned in Daf Yud Aleph that Avelut is the Rabbanan, the Tosfot says that's only the Isur Melacha of Avelut. But Avelut itself, the goof of Avelut, that's Din D'Oraita. And that's why the Gemara here is not saying that the mitzvah of Simcha is stronger because it's D'Oraita, because Avelut itself is also D'Oraita. Avelut is not a Din D'Rabbanan, says Tosfot. It's actually Din D'Oraita. That's the first part of the Tosfot, the first teretz to the question. The second part of the Tosfot gives a very, very different teretz. The second part of the Tosfot says, I'll tell you, Avelut is Din D'Rabbanan, but also the Simcha of Chol HaMoed, or the Chag, is also Mid'Rabbanan. How could that be? We have a pasuk. Says the Tosfot, the pasuk of V'samachta b'chagecha is talking about the korban of Shlamei Chagiga, Shlamei Simcha. That's the Oraita. But the rest of the Simcha, Basar, V'yayin, food and drink and clothes, all the other stuff of Simcha and Chag, that's only Din D'Rabbanan, and that's why it's Din D'Rabbanan of Simcha in front of Din D'Rabbanan of Avelut. These two contradicting terutzim in the Tosfot are actually a big machloket in the Rishonim, and the Ritva helps us to understand that this machloket is not only a machloket between two ideas in the Tosfot, it's the machloket between the Geonim and Ri from the Tosfot. The Geonim said that Avelut is Din D'Oraita, but not all of Avelut. The Avelut of the first day, Avelut of Yom Rishon, the first day according to the Geonim, is Din D'Oraita. Ri said no, there is no Avelut from D'Oraita. In D'Oraita you have only Aninut, you have only a Din of Aninut, that you cannot eat kodshim, you cannot eat korbanot. If you're an anon, what does onan mean? That somebody died and you didn't bring them to burial yet. That's what happened to Aharon when his sons died, so Aaron said, I will not eat the chatat. That's aninut. That's the oraita. But the rest of it, all of Avelut is only the Rabbanan. Also, the first day of Avelut is only the Rabbanan. That's what Re thinks. And therefore, Re thinks that the way to read the sugya is that these are two mitzvot the Rabbanan that are contradicting, and the Gaonim think that these are two mitzvot the oraita contradicting. There's a big nafkamina between these two terutzim, not only in the way of reading the Gemara, but also in a very specific situation. What happens if there is a death in the second day of Chag, Yom Tov Sheni of Galuyot? According to the Geonim, Yom Tov Sheni of Galuyot is the Rabbanan. Everybody agrees on that. But Avelut is the Oraita according to the Geonim. So according to the Geonim, the first day of Avelut will be stronger than the Chag because it's the Oraita. And the Chag is only the Rabbanan. According to Ri, no. The first day will not be counted as part of the Avelut because it's only Din the Rabbanan. And that's enough kamina between the Geonim and the Ri and between these two different approaches in the same Tosfot. So after we learned Rashi and Tosfot, I want to sum up what we saw because we saw some very important things having to do with sadness and happiness, with Avelut and Simcha Chag. First, we learned that the reason that the Simcha overcomes Avelut is not because Simcha is stronger than Avelut. We proved it also from the Sugya, and we also saw this in the Geonim. Because the Geonim, bottom line, said that if the mitzvah of Simcha is the Rabbanan, the mitzvah of Avelut, that according to them is the Raita, will overcome the mitzvah of Simcha. So what the Sugya taught us is it's not a fight between happiness and sadness. There are two different reasons why Simcha will overtake Avelut, or Avelut will overtake Simcha. Rabim, mitzvah aseh of Rabim is stronger than the mitzvah aseh of Yachid. And mitzvah aseh of the Raita is stronger than the mitzvah aseh of the Rabbanan. Those are the things that are working in our sugya, and not having happiness as a stronger emotion than sadness, or as something higher than sadness that a religious person needs to experience. And that is a very important thing to take out of the sugya, so we won't accidentally think that the sadness in our lives does not have a real and strong place in our Avodat Hashem. It's not that we're saying that Simcha is stronger. No, they're both in the same strength. There are different questions here. The Oraita de Rabbanan and Yachid and Rabim. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll also get back to the sugya and ask what happens when a Chag meets an Avel, and we'll see very interesting things B'ezrat Hashem in the Tosfot in Daf Chaf. I hope you continue learning Be'ezrat Hashem B'simcha. Take care.